If you shoot on a GoPro, you might have heard that using Protune can help your footage look better. So I first started messing with that a couple years ago. I turned on Protune and I went on a skydive. I imported the footage and it looked like this. It's all blown out. The colors look terrible. And I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. So I'm making this guide to help you guys with your GoPro footage. So Protune is designed for people who are a little more serious about editing their video and they want more flexibility in post-production. If you shoot on the GoPro with the standard settings, a lot of time the color is like super saturated, the whites get blown out, and it winds up looking something like this. You probably have seen the GoPro like official videos and the colors just look sharp. The footage looks amazing, and then you buy one and you just put it on the stock settings and you're like, why doesn't my footage look like that? The trick is learning what Protune is and then figuring out how to edit it in post. I edit in Final Cut Pro, so I'm going to show you guys how I treat my GoPro footage and what I learned during the process, and I hope that helps you explore the camera a little bit more. These are my GoPro settings. I'm not a professional by any means, but this is just what I've found works really well for me, and for flexibility in post, this is what I shoot on. So 2.7K, 60 frames per second. I think that the higher resolution and the higher frame rate really works well for skydiving, because if you shoot at 24 frames per second, it's a little glitchy. You know, you're falling 120 plus miles an hour. 60 frames per second really captures that action. Plus, gives me the ability to slow it down and make a really juicy slow-mo. And the resolution, you can actually crop in. So if you're a little ways away from the formation, or you just want to zoom in on the shot a little bit and make yourself seem more badass than you really are, you can crop in on it, which makes it really cool. Field of view is wide. I've tried medium, I've tried linear mode, and it just is a little bit too tight for the skydives. You don't get as much in the field of vision as I like. Low light is off, spot meter is off. I mean, I shoot pretty much in the day with the GoPro. The spot meter really is if you're in like a dark spot and you want to expose to the outside. So I don't use that because it tends to jack up the exposure once you leave the airplane. Protune, when you turn Protune on, you get all these options. So white balance, I put it on native so it can just pick 6500K would be like sunlight, and 5500K is generally a cloudy day. So you can play with that if you want to. I just leave it on native. It tends to do a pretty good job. Color is flat. Now if you just want to get better footage out of your GoPro and not mess with it, choose GoPro Color. It works really well. It's not as yellow as the old one. It's not as saturated. So you can just do that, and yeah, you really don't have to worry about it. The shutter I put on auto. I've read that you should have a shutter speed that is twice your frame rate, so 120, but every time I set it up like that, I just can't get it to work right, so I put it on auto. ISO limit 400. Anything higher than that and it tends to blow out the highlights, and it tends to just jack up the shots. Since I'm outside all the time using my GoPro, I don't need a higher ISO because I don't need that much noise in my image. Sharpness is low, so I can just add in a little bit of sharpness in post, but I find the GoPro footage, it tends to be pretty sharp anyways. So if I want to match it to like my Canon camera, I leave it on low. Sometimes I add sharpness back in post, but oftentimes I just don't. Now the big thing that I had to figure out was the exposure value compensation here. Minus 1.0. I don't know why it's set up like that. So when you turn Protune on and you record it, it tends to blow out the image. So you have to set your exposure value and compensation down. 1.0 seems to work really well for me. Seems to get the exposure right. So I've been using that and just not messing with it. Yeah, so those are my GoPro settings. And let's jump into Final Cut Pro, and I'll show you what I do in post to bring out the details. So I've got some footage in here. Come on, Clay. Come on. Yeah. Let's just play it the way it is here. So it looks pretty gray. Pretty unsaturated. The ground looks pretty grayed out, everything. The sky's not very blue. You see what I'm saying? So what you want to do, if you hit Command 7, brings up your waveform scope here. So you can see the colors in everything, and this is pretty much your brightness. So you can see here that it's pegged out at 100%. So not percent, but there are areas where it's totally bright, and there are areas here just above 0. So the exposure looks pretty good. Wow, that looks cool. So you can see here, this kind of explains you what the Luma is. It actually goes from your screen left to right. So these kind of yellow greenish, that correlates to this part. Right here, that's your horizon. It's kind of a bar of white, which is why it's up here. And then down here, bam, you've got your blues. So the weird thing about skydiving is you have these areas of shadow when you leave the plane that it's super dark here, right? So you can see that the exposure on this shot is pretty good. But once you get out of the airplane, look, here you go. This is almost white, and it's only up here by like 70%. So I kind of like to make it so that it's going to be darker here, and then so that the jump is going to be properly exposed, because we are skydiving anyways. And I don't mind that super contrasty look. I kind of like super contrasty. So here's how we treat a shot like this. First off, I set the color balance. So you can hit balance color. It does a pretty good job, but I like to select the white balance. This is an area that should sort of be pure white. No, it's just not doing it for me. Sometimes that just doesn't work. I'm gonna go ahead and try without setting my white balance and see what happens. So we want to set the shadows here just above 0, and also set the highlights almost all the way there. So you can see it's starting to brighten up already. There we go. Starting to get some contrast in there. Now got to dial in the saturation. So I'm gonna turn, whoa, look, I can turn it all the way up. That's like way too blue for me. So I'm gonna dial it back just a little bit. And here's my secret to make this, the earth kind of pop. I like to draw the midtones down. If I draw them all the way down, super, super contrasty. And you can see the sky is too blue, and his body here is just too dark. But look at how the terrain pops. Let me play this for you. So you're gonna see super, super contrasty. The blues are a little too blue. But just look at how the earth kind of pops there. If you leave the midtones up, the earth looks kind of not as cool. So I draw them down quite a bit because I like the way that looks. Sometimes you got to bring the shadows back up a little bit when you do that. So yeah, I like the way that looks. The color seems to be pretty well balanced on that shot. So let's go to another one that's got a little more dynamic range. So this shot, I'm sitting inside the airplane, and the exposure is set pretty good. You can see the black is just above 0, and some of the highlights are pretty pegged here. So select my clip, and let's try and set the balance color. There we go. So we're gonna balance color. Select white balance. Again, it's looking a little bit on the green side, so I'm go ahead and treat it without balancing color. Yes, hello kitty. I love you too, but Papa's trying to make a video, okay? So, my exposure's set already. I'm gonna throw the saturation up a little bit. Oh, it's too far. I think you go too far and then just dial it back. It's right where I think is cool. So, if you want a little more of the inside the airplane, you can draw the midtones up, right? And it doesn't look too bad. And then bring the shadows back. So bring midtones up, bring the shadows back. And now I'm pulling out a lot more detail inside the plane. This is an example of a shot where Protune really shines because you've got the detail preserved inside the airplane, and you've got outside is getting a lot of detail too. If you were just to shoot on the regular settings, it would probably expose for the inside the airplane, and then the outside would be totally blown out. It would look almost white. Or it would expose for the outside, and then inside the airplane would be like black and dark and be real inconsistent. So another way you can set this, right, is bring my midtones down, bring my shadows up a hair, set my color, saturation, and then you can play with that, you know. So I do kind of like it a little darker in the airplane. I like to see some footage outside the plane. I'll get a little dark there. So I like this shot. Kind of shows you how you can use Protune. This is a hungry cat. Give me a minute, Clay. Dang. So let me show you guys what I do for slow-mo, right? So I'm gonna take this scene right here, exit. Exits are always cool to throw in slow-mo. And I'm gonna slow it down to 50%. And it's gonna take a second to render, and here we go. It's in 50%, so it's not glitchy. I get that nice slow-mo exit. And yeah, that's pretty much how I treat my GoPro footage. It's pretty basic. It's not super technical. It takes a little bit extra time if you want to get your footage to pop. You can do Protune with GoPro Color, and it's going to look good out of the box. You can just set the contrast and exposure a little bit, and it's going to look fine. Again, this is more advanced stuff. So if you're just like an average GoPro user, you're not really interested in editing, this is probably not for you. Just go with the stock settings, you know, and you're gonna get a good effect. It's a good camera. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me know how you guys treat your GoPro footage, because I'm kind of interested in what other people do. It took me forever to learn this. I'm searching on YouTube and everything, so it'd be really cool to see what you guys do. Anyways, thanks for liking the video. Thanks for commenting, those of you that comment, and thanks for subscribing to the channel. I'm hoping to do a lot more of this in the future, so I appreciate it. See you guys next time.